Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Sunday, February 1st, 2026. And I have to be honest with you, looking at the calendar this morning, I felt a little, haunted, but in a good way. Like the date itself was staring back at me.
Haunted is a pretty heavy word for a Sunday morning. What brought that on?
It's because of this document you slipped into the stack this week, the one titled The Unbroken Chain. I opened it expecting, maybe a standard list of birthdays or something, the usual on this day in history stuff.
Right.
But the premise here is wild. It suggests that today, February 1st, isn't just a random date. It argues that there's this uncanny, almost cosmic rhythm to history where this specific day acts as a pivot point for Black history and global liberation.
Is a fascinating premise. And I'll admit, when I first saw the source, I had my skeptic's hat on firmly. I'm a data person. History is rarely that neat, It's usually messy, chaotic.
It doesn't fit in the box.
Exactly. It refuses to. But then I started cross-referencing the claims with the National Archives, the census data, UN biographies. And while the cosmic part is up for debate, the timeline is undeniable.
It feels like a pulse, right? Like the heartbeat of a specific struggle.
Or, as the author calls it, a chain, link by link. Each event building on the pressure and the progress of the one before it.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to test this theory. We're going to trace this unbroken chain from, the dusty legal papers of the American Civil War all the way to the turn of the millennium. We need to figure out, is this just humans looking for patterns where they don't exist, like seeing faces in clouds? Or is there actually a rhythm to how freedom is won?
And I think we'll find that even where the dates get a little fuzzy, because we have to be honest about the data. The story itself, the theme, is incredibly cohesive. It tells a story of evolution.
All right, let's forge the first link. We're traveling back to February 1st, 1865. The setting is Washington, D.C. Civil War is still raging, it's cold, it's miserable, and something happens at the White House that changes the whole game.
This is the legal foundation of everything that follows. On February 1st, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln signs the joint resolution submitting the 13th Amendment to the states.
Okay, hold on. I need you to clarify something here because I think most people, myself included, usually point to the Emancipation Proclamation. That was 1863. Didn't that free the slaves? Why are we celebrating a signature 2 years later?
That is the most common misconception. The National Archives source makes a crucial distinction here. The Emancipation Proclamation was a wartime executive order.
A military strategy.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It only freed enslaved people in the states that were actively rebelling against the Union.
So let me get this straight. If you were an enslaved person in a border state that stayed loyal, like, say, Kentucky or Maryland, the proclamation did nothing for you.
You were still enslaved. It didn't touch you. And more importantly, Lincoln was a lawyer. He was terrified that as soon as the war ended, the proclamation could just be challenged in court or tossed out. It was temporary. It was built on sand.
So he needed something bulletproof.
Exactly. He needed to weld freedom into the actual bedrock of the Constitution. That's what the 13th Amendment is. It abolishes slavery and involuntary servitude everywhere. No takebacks. It overrides state laws. It overrides future presidents.
But the source mentions a loophole, right? The whole except as a punishment for crime thing.
Yes. And that phrase is a massive, massive caveat. We could do a whole separate deep dive on how that clause paved the way for the convict leasing system and, arguably modern mass incarceration. But for the purpose of February 1st, 1865, the focus was ending chattel slavery.
Okay, so here's a detail for the fact checkers listening. The document says Lincoln signed it on February 1st. But didn't Congress actually pass it the day before?
You caught that. Yes, the House passed it on January 31st, but, and this is rare, Lincoln broke with tradition. Presidents don't usually sign constitutional amendments. They're ratified by states. But Lincoln wanted to make a statement. He wanted his name on that joint resolution. And that signature, that act of presidential will, happened on February 1st.
So that's link one, the legal foundation. The chains are physically broken, or at least the law says they have to be.
Correct. But as we know, having a piece of paper that says you're free and actually having a voice to define who you are, those are two very different things.
Which brings us to link two. We jump forward almost 40 years. February 1st, 1902, Joplin, Missouri.
The birth of James Mercer Langston Hughes.
Langston Hughes. I feel like everyone reads A Dream Deferred in high school, but I don't think we always appreciate how radical he was for his time.
He was the architect of a new consciousness. If 1865 was about legal freedom, then 1902 marks the beginning of cultural freedom. You have to remember, before Hughes, a lot of black art was trying to mimic European styles to prove worthiness.
Right, like trying to write sonnets like Shakespeare to show, hey, we can do this too.
Exactly. Hughes rejected that premise entirely. He didn't want to write about daffodils. He wanted to write about the rhythm of Harlem, the jazz clubs, the people struggling to pay rent.
I was reading in the notes about his first published poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. He wrote that when he was just a teenager.
17 years old. Can you imagine? He's on a train crossing the Mississippi on his way to Mexico. He looks out the window at the sunset on the water, and it just hits him. He connects the Mississippi to the Congo, the Nile, the Euphrates.
I've known rivers ancient as the world.
It's such a power move. He grounded Black identity, not in the shame of slavery, but in the depth of human history. He was basically saying, we were here before your civilizations even started. We run deep.
And he coined jazz poetry, right? Which I'm guessing isn't just poetry about jazz.
No, and this is a great term to define. It means the poetry sounded like jazz. It broke the traditional rules of meter. It didn't go da-dee-um, da-dee-um. It had syncopation. It had improvisation. It would cut abruptly. He brought the language of the people into the high art salons.
So he made it okay to be Black and proud of the culture as it actually was, not how white critics wanted it to be.
That's it, exactly. And that confidence, that cultural backbone, it seems like a prerequisite for what comes next.
Yeah.
Because you can't fight for your rights if you don't believe you deserve them.
Precisely. Hughes articulated the dream. He asked the famous question, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up or does it explode?
And on February 1st, 1960, we get the explosion.
The Greensboro sit-ins. This is the link in the chain that, to me, feels the most cinematic. We've moved from the White House to a train car, and now we're at a lunch counter in North Carolina.
At a Woolworth's, which was like the Amazon of its day, a massive retail chain.
So set the scene for us. Who starts this? Because it often sounds like it just happened.
Oh, it definitely didn't just happen. It was 4 freshmen from North Carolina A&T, Ezell Blair Jr., Franklin McCain, Joseph McNeil, and David Richmond. And looking at the Census Bureau data, what strikes me is how disciplined they were. This was not a spur-of-the-moment thing.
They had a plan.
They did. They bought toothpaste and school supplies at the desegregated counter first. They kept their receipts to prove they were paying customers. Then they walked over to the whites-only lunch counter, sat down, and ordered coffee.
And when the waitress refused?
They just sat there,
Yep.
opened their textbooks, and studied. No yelling, no fighting back. They just forced the system to look at them.
The numbers you pulled on this are staggering. I mean, usually a protest takes time to build.
The velocity was insane. So day 1, 4 students. They stay until closing. Day 2,
More.
25 students show up.
That's a 500% increase overnight.
Day 3, over 60. Day 4, 300. By the end of the week, we are talking about 1,400 students. They're spilling out onto the sidewalks. The store is paralyzed.
And this is where the simple summary often misses the point. It wasn't just a moral victory. It wasn't about hearts and minds. This was an economic siege.
Huge economic impact.
Yeah.
The sources indicate Woolworths lost over $200,000 during the protests.
Which, during the inflation math, that's over $2.1 million in today's money.
Right. You can ignore 4 guys trying to order coffee. You cannot ignore a $2 million hole in your balance sheet. That hits the ledger. This was the new Negro that Langston Hughes wrote about finally taking the stage.
So the chain is strong. 1865, the law. 1902, the voice. 1960, the resistance. But I've pumped the brakes there because the next few links in this unbroken chain document, they get a little shaky on the facts.
I had a feeling you were going to bring this up. I saw your notes.
Well, our job is to deep dive, not just skim. The document lists the next events as Kenya becoming a republic on February 1st, 1964, and Huey Newton, the founder of the Black Panthers, being released from prison on February 1st, 1970. But your research suggests we need to issue a correction.
We do. And this is important because it shows how history is often mythologized to fit a narrative. Let's take Kenya first. The document claims February 1st is the big day. But according to the University of Central Arkansas archives, Kenya actually became a republic on December 12, 1964.
So they missed it by 10 months. That's not a small rounding error.
It isn't. But here's where we have to balance, critical thinking with thematic analysis. If we look at the spirit of the time, the link still matters, metaphorically at least. You have Jomo Kenyatta, a man imprisoned for the Mau Mau rebellion, becoming president.
It's that same energy, right? Moving from asking politely to demanding power.
Exactly. It's transnational resistance. The struggle wasn't just in Greensboro, it was in Nairobi too. So the theme holds.
And what about Huey Newton? The document says February 1st, 1970, released from prison.
Another discrepancy. The records show his conviction was reversed in May 1970, and he was physically released in August.
So not February 1st. Why include it then?
I think the document is trying to mark the shift in eras, even if the date is wrong. 1970 represents a massive turn. We've gone from the nonviolent sit-ins of 1960 to the Black Panther.
Right, the 10-point program.
We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. And they were carrying guns to make sure they got it.
So even if the dates in the document are a bit creative, the progression is real. We go from please serve us coffee in 1960 to we will feed our own children and defend our own neighborhoods in 1970.
Precisely. The chain is shifting from integration to self-determination. The narrative holds, even if the calendar's a little off. And honestly, realizing that makes it feel more real to me. Revolutions aren't scheduled neatly.
Okay, I can accept that. The narrative arc is truthful, even if the data points are messy. But let's get back to firm ground, because the next link is solid and it takes us global again. February 1st, 1990, South Africa.
This is a massive moment. The source cites this as the unbanning of the ANC, the African National Congress.
The party of Nelson Mandela. Now, I know you're going to hit me with a technicality here because I saw the de Klerk Foundation source.
Just a small one. President F.W. de Klerk actually delivered the speech unbanning the ANC, the PC, and the Communist Party on February 2nd, 1990.
Okay, so we missed it by 24 hours. I think we can forgive that one.
I think we can. But think about how government works. If a president walks into Parliament on the morning of February 2nd to announce the death of apartheid, when was that decision finalized? When was the order signed?
The day before.
Exactly. February 1st, 1990 was the eve of change. It was the moment the old world died, even if the public didn't know it yet.
That's a powerful image, the eve of change. And the symmetry here is crazy. You started with the 13th Amendment ending legal slavery in the U.S. And 125 years later, almost to the day, you have the beginning of the end for apartheid.
It shows that the struggle is never just local. The 13th Amendment and the unbanning of the ANC are like bookends to a century of legal oppression. And remember, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison just 10 days later. So February 1st was the tipping point.
So we've gone from legal emancipation to cultural renaissance to grassroots resistance to militant self-defense and now to global liberation. That brings us to the final link, February 1st, 1999.
This one is about leadership, governance.
We're talking about Kofi Annan.
The first Black African Secretary General of the United Nations to rise from the ranks of UN staff. He wasn't a politician dropped in, he was a career diplomat. He knew the building.
And the document links February 1st to his leadership. What was going on in early 99?
This was a critical window. Annan had just gone to the World Economic Forum in Davos in late January and challenged the world's business leaders to a global compact. By February 1st, his administration was moving to make this a reality.
What was the core idea? I mean, global compact sounds like typical UN jargon.
It's actually pretty revolutionary. It was basically corporate social responsibility. He told the CEOs of the world, you can't just make profit. You have a duty to human rights, to labor standards, to the environment. He was trying to give globalization a human face.
That feels like a massive leap from where we started. In 1865, Black people in America were legally considered property. By 1999, a Black man from Ghana is telling the world's most powerful corporations how to behave.
That is the arc. That's the unbroken chain. Annan also championed something called the responsibility to protect, or R2P.
Break that down for us. What does that mean?
Historically, sovereignty was a shield. A dictator could do whatever he wanted inside his own borders, and the world couldn't stop him because it was his country. Annan argued that sovereignty is a responsibility. If a government abuses its people, commits genocide, ethnic cleansing, it forfeits its sovereignty, and the world has a duty to intervene.
Which closes the loop, doesn't it? The 13th Amendment was the U.S. government saying, we will intervene to stop slavery. Annan took that principle and made it global.
It really is about the evolution of power. You go from pleading for your humanity to be recognized, to creating the culture that defines that humanity, to marching for your rights, to seizing power, to finally, with Annan, sitting at the head of the table and setting the rules for the entire planet.
So cosmic coincidence or rhythm of history?
I think it's a rhythm. Whether every date lands exactly on February 1st or just orbits around it, the progression is what matters. It reminds us that history isn't just a pile of random events. It's built, link by link.
And that's what I love about this unbroken chain idea. It frames history as a construction project that's still going on. It's not a museum exhibit, it's a job site.
That's the key.
So we've chased it from Lincoln to Langston, from Woolworths to the United Nations, Legal freedom, cultural voice, direct action, and global leadership.
And what stands out to me is that none of these links were inevitable. The 13th Amendment could have failed. The students at Woolworths could have given up on day 2.
But they didn't because people forged the link.
Right. It takes heat and pressure to forge a chain.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on February 1st, 2026, I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought. We've been looking backward at the chain. But if the theory holds, the chain doesn't start.
It raises the uncomfortable question. If today is February 1st, what link is being forged right now?
Exactly. In 1865, it was a signature. In 1960, it was 4 guys sitting on stools. In 1902, a baby being born in Missouri. You usually don't know you're making history when you're in it. You're just living.
So look around you today. The small acts of resistance, the new cultural expressions, the shifts in policy. One of them is the next link. And you might be the one holding the hammer.
That is a heavy but exciting thought to start the wind. Thank you for taking this journey with us through the Unbroken Chain.
Always a pleasure to connect the dots.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Stay curious.